welcome in. Whether you're outside mowing the lawn, maybe you're grilling up some yummy food, or maybe you're inside changing diapers, or maybe just maybe you finally got a moment to sit back, relax, and finally listen to your favorite podcast. Whatever you're doing, wherever you're at, thanks for listening. I'm your host, Jay, and welcome to the Young Dad Podcast. Today, we are diving into a powerful story of transformation. Our guest, or my guest, not our guest, I guess our guest, your guest, my guest, both our guests. My guest, Michael. Michael, how are you doing, man?
Fantastic, brother. It's great to be here.
It's awesome to have you. I'm glad we're able to do this. This has been, I wouldn't say a long time in the making for us, but it's been a minute. We've been trying
Few
to
months.
nail this thing down, but between my stuff and your stuff, we've made it happen. So we stay
Yeah.
persistent. We stayed in there. But once upon a time, you lived in what many would consider the dream life, traveling the world, creating music with icons, living a fast-paced life, high-profile existence. But behind the scenes, you were struggling with
Mhm.
some deep insecurities, past trauma, and a life that felt empty. After hitting rock bottom, Mike, you began a journey that led you to a 10-day silent meditation retreat where you found the peace you had been searching for. So we're going to explore your journey today of self-discovery, accountability, and the power of transformation. So, Michael, on your website, it's a vivid picture of your past. Your
Mhm.
story, it's out there, it's vivid, it's beautiful to read. So living the dream, but feeling empty inside.
Yeah.
Kind of captures it, at least for me, is kind of how I see it. You were living the dream, but you felt empty inside.
Yeah.
Can you take us back to that moment when you realized something had to change and what was going on, what was going through your mind?
Yeah, of course. So, just to give you a little bit of a history there, I fell in love with music at a very early age. So, 3, 4 years old, I'm banging on pots and pans. I'm singing around the dinner table, putting my hand out for a dollar bill. Like I loved music, and I fell in love with it through my father. My father was an audiophile, stereophile, so he would build like crazy sound systems. So music was all around me, all different types of music. And then when I got into the creation side of it, where I was starting bands and I was getting into songwriting and getting into production, I mean, all things led to this is what I'm going to be doing the rest of my life. I was like, this is who I am, right? And so that continued and consistently built. Although I did go to college for a short period of time, mostly because of what my parents wanted me to do versus what I wanted to do. I basically went there and partied for 3 years, as you would imagine, and it wasn't as much about the schooling as it was about the social capital. By the time I had started to get some momentum in my career, that was around like 2011, maybe something like that, 2011, maybe a little earlier than that. And then it was just like rapid fire. And at an eventual point, it got to a place where almost it felt overnight from the outside looking in, but it was years and years of work. I started touring. I started playing all different places around the country and some places internationally. All to be said, that continued, built. And in a way, think that I also convinced myself that I was living that dream life. I mean, compared to some of my friends growing up in a small town in New Jersey, like they were still back at home. They were still, doing some of the same things, going to the same places. And I was out in Jamaica playing a, marijuana festival. And it was like crazy. I was in India playing in front of 10,000 people, like getting served crazy, crazy food. It was amazing. But to be honest, man, I had a lot of stuff happen in the beginning of my life that I sort of just like locked away. And, drinking, partying, socializing, and music became an escape. And so when it all kind of hit ahead was when I transitioned from an artist to a songwriter and a producer, which is more behind the scenes. I was like, this is it. Okay, this is going to be it. Like, I'm not going to be out in the world as much, and I'll be able to, take care of myself. That wasn't the case. It just like repurposed into the same lifestyle in a different context. And around 2018 was when it all kind of like came together, where I was going through a breakup, which was a significant breakup because to me, it was the first time I had actually like started looking at myself. Otherwise I was just like ruminating in the pain and, they did this. I wish I could have done this. I did that. Like, it wasn't ever really a true accountability.
Mm-hmm.
And that was what really propelled me. So like leading up into that point, on paper, my life looked incredible. And I did my best to keep my own sense of gratitude for it, because to be honest, like, I was making great money. I was working with like A-list artists from all around the world, from hip hop artists all the way to country artists like Chase Rice, to, international artists like BTS, Rage Against the Machine. I mean, it was crazy. I was working with amazing people. So I did my best to like remind myself of how lucky and how much of a gift my life was. But honestly, that ran out. I mean, underneath it, I felt empty. I felt scared. I felt lost. I didn't know who I was. I felt like my life was out of control. And I had little to no discipline in my life. Not to mention, when you change your vision of your life so many times of where you're headed, I didn't even know where I was headed. I was like, I don't even know where I'm going. Like, all I know is I just keep desiring more of this thing that's supposed to make me feel validated, that's supposed to make me feel, seen and heard. And even when I am, it felt like I was being seen and heard from the wrong people. And
100%.
so it was, yeah, man, it was deep. It was really deep. And I wish I could say 6 years ago that's what was the beginning, and it was in a sense. But for about 2 years, I teetered in and out of my old regressive lifestyle and this new sort of found awareness.
Okay.
And it was about 2 years after that when the world sort of slowed down, 2020, and
Slow
that
down for
was like
everybody.
for everybody. Yeah,
Slow down for everyone,
exactly.
But it's interesting to hear you say like different things. Just so far, I don't mean to cut you off, but there's like
Mhm.
some really cool things that you're mentioning here that are really important.
Yeah.
Essentially, you what one could perceive that has a background in faith or spirituality of some kind, and you mentioned it yourself with your language there, like the things of the
Mhm.
world. Like you fell
Mhm.
into those traps
Yeah.
of all the things that the media, the world, other people, social media, mainstream media, all are telling us like this is the life. This is the life you want to be living, and this is the good life. This is supposed to make you happy.
Mhm.
This will make you fulfilled and whatnot. And
Mhm.
for very few and far between, I feel in that sphere, it makes them happy.
Yeah.
Very
You're right.
few and far between, because maybe that absolutely is like the lifestyle they've always wanted, they love, they're engaged in, they're engulfed in. But I would feel for majority, and correct me if I'm wrong here, are kind of in that same similar spot even today that are in the industry that are just like, man, I don't want to, I'm stuck here, like doing this life I want to live. Like Rogan talks about it all the time with different
Yeah.
comedians
Yeah.
that were like touring and on the road, just how like he talks about it super openly. He's like, man, that lifestyle sucks.
Yeah.
He's like, it's hard, like going on the
It's
road, it's hard
lonely.
traveling. It's yeah, he talks about how lonely it is. He talks
Mhm.
about the addictions that he's seen from other people.
Mhm.
That's why he did his whole thing in Austin to kind of create like a healthy hub
Mhm.
for like comedians to come, and like he works out with them, he changes their diet, he
Mhm.
helps them get back, like gets them the right supplements and vitamins and doctors, and like helps them like be healthy people like
Yeah.
overall, so that lifestyle doesn't catch up to them, which I think is really cool and like really inspiring, like for him to do. I know everyone has their take on Rogan, but I think the little things he does, I've listened to him for 1,000 episodes. I've listened to him for a very long
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
Um, I really enjoyed Joe Rogan over the years, but it's cool. Even he's changed. And you mentioned
Mhm.
like the vision, like your vision changes throughout your life, right?
Mhm.
But there's always those parts of you that are like, man, there's always that part of you that's like, this isn't really what we want, man. This isn't really
Mhm.
what we want. This isn't really where we're going, so it's important to recognize those things. And, it's those little voices are always kind of bugging at us, like, yeah, we're not doing this. This isn't what we should be doing, but you can do it. Um, for
Yeah,
me,
you could.
that's the Holy Spirit talking, but it's
Yeah.
everyone has a different perception of that. So,
Of course, it's, I agree. God whispers in our ears and our minds in different ways. And,
hmm
whether you define it as God or spirit or universe or source, it's like, to me, it's the same energy. It's coming from the same place. And so I'm really lucky to have had many moments where I had some whispers come in that, quite frankly, saved my life. And I agree that, like, a lot of times people look from the surface level inward, meaning they look at what it looks like, what their life looks like versus what their life feels like and what they're feeling inside.
hmm
And that's where people get it wrong. Is like there's nothing necessarily inherently wrong about building resources, building compounds, helping people in that way, or at the very least, building a good life for your family and your ecology. There's nothing inherently wrong to being an
Mm-mm.
artist, but where's the motivation coming from? And something that
Mm-hmm.
really kind of struck really clearly for me, that I had to do a bunch of work around my relationship with, with the Holy Spirit, with Jesus, with God, with all of these different components of how I was raised, as well as some other things that like kind of were birthed later in my life and my studies. And it was like, where does creativity even come from?
Yeah, no, that's
Where
a big
does it
question
really
because,
come
like,
from?
exactly, you look all around us throughout
Mhm,
history. All these things that we have, our
mhm,
computers that we're on, Riverside that
mhm,
we're recording on, the Google Doc that I have, Google itself, the coffee, the drinks, everything that we're eating, drinking, wearing, thinking, like
mhm,
everything came from some kind of creativity. Someone had an
mhm,
idea from somewhere. These
mhm.
ideas just aren't random. That would
Yes.
be way too much of a coincidence
Mhm,
that someone randomly thought like, okay, I think it'd be cool to make a little baby Yoda figurine that lights up, or I think it'd be cool to make a baseball, or I think it'd be cool to make a ring, or I think it'd be cool to make baseball cards. Like, oh, random ideas, fat chance kind of thing. No, it was like these are all like divine ideas,
yeah.
and they
Agreed.
all came from somewhere. They all came from somewhere. The ideas that you have in your head aren't just ideas, right?
Yeah.
They're purposeful thoughts. They are meant to be for you. And if you have a really great idea, if you have an idea that's bugging you, bugging you, bugging you, bugging you, bugging you, that's probably an idea only a handful of people are having in the
Yeah.
world, right?
Absolutely.
A handful of people in the world are having it, and you may have that idea for that really great thing, and you're like, man, I really need to create that really great thing. And maybe only you have that idea in the entire United States, and
Mhm,
only someone else in India, and maybe only someone else in China has this same idea. So there's
mhm.
3 of you out of 8 billion people that are having this idea. It's not coincidence.
Yeah.
It's you need to follow those ideas. You need to follow those things and do those things and go with them because they're
100%.
important. So,
Yeah, and that was something that I recognized, was like, once I cleared up, because I feel like creativity is in a way a channeling. Like, you
mhm,
are becoming clear enough without the levels of dissonance and the self-hatred and all the stuff that's there, so that those whispers turn into voices that are
mhm,
beautiful and that you can actually channel and work with and allow to come through you. And that's what, to me, any level of creativity, whether it's an idea, whether it's a song, whether it's a piece of art that's like a visual art, like, it's really just a clearness and a presence that is born through, to me, the work that we do. And so what
mhm,
I found back then was I wasn't doing much work on myself. I wasn't really looking. I was
yeah,
living externally, and it was fucking killing me. It was
yeah,
literally killing me. And, again, luckily I had a lot of people enter into my life, not coincidentally, but
no.
synchronically,
Is this
to,
are you mentioning the when you had that what could be called a chance encounter with someone
yeah,
fresh from the meditation retreat was kind
yeah.
of the biggest catalyst for your change? So I'm assuming this is right about 2020,
This
right?
was that was actually 2018. So that
20. Oh,
was,
okay.
yeah. So like how it kind of manifested in my life was like, I had, it was within a month or two of me going through a pretty deep transformative moment of a
Mhm.
breakup and some other things sort of changing. And then in walks this gentleman that just so happened to be subletting a room at our place. And I had never met him. And I opened the door, and he's literally just flew in from Thailand. And I was like, enamored. I was like, what are you, my first instinct being in LA was, what are you on? What are you doing? Blah, blah, blah. And he told me meditation. And I just so happened to like really just start working with like an app called Headspace, which
Headspace is great. Shout out to
yeah, it's
Headspace. I've
great.
used
Shout
them
out
before. I think they're great. Not a sponsor,
100%. Yeah. Yeah. Shout
but
out to
they could
Headspace.
be.
They could be. so, so yeah, that propelled me. And, again, even though I struggled to integrate for a few years, that was really the beginning of something turning in my being and my mind, where I was
Okay.
like, there's a lot more. Just had struggled to make the proper changes in my life as a result of that interchange. That's all that was. So
So that was the spark. That was the
that
spark
was
kind
the
of being lit
spark.
a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
then as that spark goes, life goes on for a couple years, and then you really start to dive into it.
hmm
So along this journey, you've been filled with facing deep shadows and finding peace. how did diving into meditation and mindfulness help you confront all these different parts of yourself that you've been running from for so long? Because you
Yeah.
mentioned at the top there that
Mhm.
you had locked some things away, as with all of us, very common. I work in
Yeah.
mental health, so it's very common,
Yeah.
even for myself, that we take these parts of ourselves from when we're younger, from when we're little, and we kind of lock them away in these boxes, right?
Mhm.
Talk our inner child or our younger self, however you want to phrase it, they're the same thing. Or they're different phases of they're the same thing essentially, but they can be at different milestones for us, because
Mhm.
we could have locked something away from when we're a teenager, and then maybe when we're a teenager, we work through that part, and then we work through the 10-year-old part, and maybe there was something that happened at 7, and maybe there's something that happened at 5 that we remember. So we go back through to when we remember it and whatnot. Sometimes it can even go all the way back to birth, something with our biological parent, to
Mhm.
where there maybe was something there too. So regardless, that's some of the more sciencey part of it. But how did meditation and mindfulness help you confront these different parts of yourself that you've been running from for so long?
Yeah.
Because it's your whole life, you know?
Yeah, of course. I would say the most and I'm a transformational coach, so I work in the wellness space as well, helping people. So what I've noticed in my own journey, specifically in the beginning, and then also where people are on that timeline of transformation, is the simple act of slowing down brings up a lot. When you're not distracting yourself, when you're not out in the world, in the things that you deem as yours, you, and you slow down and you just sit with what comes up, whether it's emotions, sensations, thoughts, long enough, you're bound to get to with the proper amount of concentration and not giving up, because it isn't easy to sit with your stuff. You're bound to get to really juicy nuggets. You're bound to
Mhm.
get there. And going from literally 2 minutes a day of meditation to 10 hours was a big jump.
That's a
It was a
huge jump.
huge jump.
Would not recommend something that big.
Yeah,
So
for
that's like going cold turkey off of like
yeah, anything.
something,
It's
anything. You're
anything,
right.
yeah. It was a, thousands and thousands percent difference, and it was for 10 days, so it was 100 hours. And so, yeah, I mean, that level of observation, over that period of time, I didn't have anywhere to go. You're silent, like, where are you gonna
Yeah,
go?
you're
And
stuck with
so
yourself.
what
It's
came up for me in that time, what was most visceral, the first thing that I needed to confront was my sister's attempted suicides. And she was around 12 years old, 11, 12 years old, and I didn't lock it away. Like, I wasn't like it never happened. It was just, I think, as an older brother, I recognized that she was in an immensity of pain. So instead of looking to it as what I went through, it was more so what she was going through, right? So
got you.
for
Yeah,
years I looked through it through her eyes versus my own.
got you.
And it took me a while to get to a place where I was able to actually sit with the guilt and the shame I felt for not being the brother that I would have loved to be looking back. Not that I was an atrocious brother, but again, older brother, 11 years old, making fun of each other, going through the really normal things that most children go through around that age, around teenage years. But because of what she was going through that had nothing to do with that period, and because of the attempted suicide and the years of being on medication, bipolar, and other attempts, and all other sorts of addictions and whatnot, I had a lot of guilt. I was like,
Mhm.
a part of me felt like it was my fault. So I had to sit with that part. And I also had to sit with the part around just like a lot of my other family dynamics that, again, because I was living such a fast lifestyle, I never really slowed down enough to even feel it. I was like, what's the next thing? What's the next thing? What's the next relationship? What's the next goal? What's the next party? And finally, years and years and years later, at 28 years old, I slowed down and felt it all. And that was the beginning. It was like almost like something unlocked in me. And then
Mhm.
it took a few years for that unlocking to manifest in my actions and behaviors, which is why I'm so
Absolutely.
passionate about being a transformational coach, to like help people alchemize that in a quicker period of time. I didn't have that back then. So it took a significant amount of time for me to see behavioral change and habit level change. Um,
Mhm.
but yeah, man, it's like, and that just continued, once you look behind the curtain, it's like really difficult to not see that anymore. You're
Mhm.
now looking at your life through a much deeper lens, especially when that also is in conjunction with your connection with God. It's like everything has purpose. Everything has a message. It's not to be super like serious. You're not just like overanalyzing. You're enjoying life as equally as dissecting it and learning and growing from it. So that process just alchemized, and over the last really 4 years, I would say, almost 5 years, it's been rapid. I mean, aggressively rapid on what I've been able to look at, what I've been able to do with that information, and how I've transformed, so much so that people don't recognize me anymore, you know?
Hmm.
And I look to that as both a grieving process and a beautiful process. Like,
Absolutely.
thank God no one can recognize me, because I didn't love myself 4 years ago. You know what I
Mm-mm.
mean?
No, I
Now
know exactly what you mean.
yeah.
I know exactly what you mean. I had some of those moments right after my divorce,
Mhm.
to where I actually went through this. I used BetterHelp, again, not a sponsor,
Yeah.
but I was looking for something very, very specific. I was
Mhm.
looking for a counselor to deal with very specific things that I wanted to deal with. I wanted to deal with some
Mhm.
past trauma from my mother. I wanted to deal with the relationship trauma as well. I wanted to deal with the divorce. And so BetterHelp was able to match me with one counselor.
Mhm.
Literally one counselor met the needs I had.
Yeah.
Call it coincidence, call it what you will, but she took me on this path over our sessions together. We had a very short time together. I want to say we had like 8 weeks, because that's all my at the time my insurance had allotted for through BetterHelp,
Mhm.
which was enough. She took me through this 8-week program of forgiveness therapy, something I had never heard of in my life.
Mhm.
Uh, I was still working on my undergrad degree at this time in 2021. I was about a year out from finishing it. That took even longer because of the divorce, but at the time I started doing this forgiveness therapy, and it was exactly like you're saying here. It was opening up that curtain and peeling back the layers of the onion, essentially.
Mhm.
And then I also additionally had some other friends and whatnot that were also encouraging me to do like the same thing. So there was a lot of nights, a lot of sessions where it was constantly just going through, going back and 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 going back. Okay, I'll get you some food in a minute. Anyways, go get yourself a snack. Welcome to the Young Dad Podcast again, where sometimes toddlers tell us they're hungry. But anyways, like I was saying, um, it's going back and going back and going back. Where I was going back to like parts of like my early childhood that I completely had forgot about. Incidents on the playground, different things that I was bullied for, different things like that. That I was just opening up all these, essentially picking all these stabs up and opening up all these wounds, however you want to phrase it, peeling back an onion, opening up the curtain, picking off scabs, whatever. And so it was crazy, and it was great because I was learning so much about myself, and it took a long time. I took a lot of failure along the way, different relationships, not like intimate relationships, but just like friendships and things like that, to where
Yeah.
I had to relearn how to be a better friend, how to be a better like coworker, and how to be more mature, and a lot of things really started to make sense after a while. To
Yeah.
where, okay, maybe why wasn't I offered that opportunity at work? Okay, because I was missing the bigger picture. Okay, why was I missing the bigger picture? I was able to really begin to essentially question myself a lot more. I
Mhm.
was able to question myself. Okay, why? Everything I got really curious with the why. You can, well, maybe not anymore because I took that down. But I had this thing at one point called the Well Balanced Dad Diet. I'll have to repost it on the new website, but it was fantastic. Being able to explore the different areas of that. Maybe I'll rewrite it because it probably time for an update. But anyways, I regress. I got really curious with the why. I wanted to know why about
Yeah.
everything. Always questioning why, and not in a bad way, but I wanted to know the why so I could take accountability.
Yeah.
And that's something that you talk about is radical accountability for our life.
Yeah.
What the heck is radical accountability? I'm sure people can guess, but what is your definition of radical accountability in our lives?
Yeah.
And what does that look like in your day to day now compared to where you were 4 years ago, 6 years
Yeah.
ago, 8 years ago?
Great question. I was just actually my sister's visiting. My son turns 1 year old tomorrow, so my sister and I were talking about this briefly. Radical accountability is where you recognize that everything in your life is merely a projection and a reflection of where you are internally. So at that level, everything that you experience, good, bad, mediocre, doesn't matter, is merely a reflection of what you're deciding, what you're thinking, and what you're feeling. right? The example is two people can go into a bar and have three people can go into a bar and have three different recollections of that night, right? Not even drinking aside. I'm just saying their perspective. One of them falls in love. The other one is turned down, and one of them gets into a fight. Three
Sounds like
different
you're talking about an episode of
experiences.
How I Met Your Mother.
Yeah,
I'm
basically,
just kidding.
which is it's a great series about some parts of the human condition. But the
Oh
idea
yeah.
is like, perception is projection. So when we bring it back to ourselves,
Hmm.
and this is hard to do because when it is something that is being triggered by someone else's negative or bad behaviors, it's hard because it's so easy to blame. It's so easy to say, wow, that guy was a jackass, or this person was really, rude to me, or, they're not understanding this, or they're not seeing me this way. But anytime that you're in blame, you're in a victim state. And every time you're in a victim state, you have zero to little room for change. So
Hmm.
if you really want to change, this is the caveat. If you really want to change, you have to be taking radical accountability and responsibility. There is
Absolutely.
absolutely nothing you can change if you're waiting for everybody else in your environment to shift before you do. And so in
Absolutely.
my life, especially as a father, of course, but even just in my relationships, it's not a perfect system where it's like right away I'm like, what am I not taking accountability for? I still have my stuff, right? So I might have a reaction or a response or a trigger that comes up, but it always is filtered through at some point, and now it's getting so close to the moment of reaction that it's almost before the moment of reaction, that like, or at the moment of reaction, it's like, what is this saying about me? What am I bringing into this situation? What was I feeling right before this trigger? And what can I take responsibility for within the walls of what I'm feeling, within the walls of what I'm saying, what I'm doing? And it's not about shame and guilt. If you get into a reactive state and you maybe say something that you didn't fully mean, it's not about going into a shame and guilt spiral. It's acknowledging, whoa, that just happened. Please forgive me, right? That whole forgiveness side, please forgive me, forgiving yourself, and then saying, what can I do differently next time? What is it that I didn't do? What did I not choose in that situation that led me down that path? And then course correct. We're not perfect, and we're not meant to be perfect. Human beings have an emotional range for a reason, but what they're there for is to learn how to be emotionally intelligent and move with the storms of life and move with those reactions, or rather with those sensations. So what does that look like in like a really grounded way? It looks like a very simple one. This is a really simple one. My wife, we have a garbage. Obviously, we all have garbages that we have to take out to wherever you take your garbage out. And my wife, it's very important for her for it to be taken out every day, or rather every week, right? So that we don't miss a week. And for me, it's a little less important because there's other things I'm focused on. Taking accountability is the times where I've missed it, saying, please forgive me, I will do that because it's important to them, because it's important to her, and is important to our life. I will do that next time, and actually doing it, which is a responsibility. A deeper version of that is if a friend says something that makes me feel uncomfortable and I have a reaction and I get a little bit frustrated with them. Maybe it's frustrated. Let me use a real example. Yesterday, my wife has these shelving units that she wants to put up in our baby's playroom, right?
Okay.
It's like a Montessori thing, like close, and like have the books facing the outside, whatever it is. She's been indecisive about where they want to go, and so she's been leaning on me to do this, and I've been showing up more on the acts of service, because acts of service is how she receives love. So I've just been
Definitely.
doing more, little things, big things. So yesterday, we were in the conversation, and we couldn't agree on where they were going to go, right? And I know, because they're clear, that wherever I put them is where they're going to go. We can't move them. They're clear. So and I need to anchor them in the wall, so it's not like
Right.
I'm not going to go
It's
and
like
spackle.
this is a
There's a
one-stop shop right here.
Yeah,
This is
it's like
we get one chance. So be
wherever
sure
you choose is where it's going to go. And
like,
so
I have no problem with where you choose it, but you have to choose, and you have to be happy with that choice, because once they're there, they are staying there. There's no if, ands, or
Exactly.
buts kind of thing.
Exactly.
I've had to have that same
Totally.
conversation with my wife. I'm like, I'm doing this one time, and they're going up one time. So be sure of it this one time. If it's not this one time, then we can arrange the furniture after that, because the furniture can move easier
Yeah,
than this
totally.
can.
So we're in that, and I'm feeling myself getting frustrated and blah blah blah. So I was like, we have a rule in our relationship that whenever we need to take 10 or 20, we take it. We say it. We're like, hey, I need 20. I'm getting riled up, whatever. Really amazing practice. So I went outside. I was sitting with my pipe and just, reflecting. And I just very simply, I was like, okay, this has nothing to do with her. What is this really about? Oh, okay, my mother's indecisiveness was really frustrating as a kid and still is frustrating to this day. So that's that. Did I take any space between my call and getting into doing this for my wife? No, I didn't take any space for myself. That's my fault. Like, I just kept running it, what is it in me, instead of being like, oh, my wife, she could never make a decision, blah blah blah, story, blaming. Oh, if she'd only known that I was tired, or blah. It's just a storyline, right? Instead of that, I took it back to myself, and I sat, and then I went over to her and I said, please forgive me, XYZ. I didn't take any time for myself, and I noticed that when I don't take time away from at least 5 minutes between being a coach and coming into this space, it's hard for me to switch my mind to get into
absolutely.
husband mode, And that's on me. That's not on her. I don't care what kind of mood she's in, even if she is rude, even if she is, it doesn't matter. Radical accountability is saying, what is your reaction to that? What is your interpretation? What are you bringing to the conversation? If you're not leading the people around you toward kindness, forgiveness, love, grace, where are you leading them? Just more of the pain. So you need to first take accountability to where you're leading yourself, and then recognize that that's going to inherently affect your environment and your relationships. That's the next step of accountability. And then you can really go bigger and go globally, right? Your circles, and then globally, dependent on how big you want to go. But the whole point is, it starts and stops with your own self. So if you're blaming your wife and blaming your friends for your problems, you're probably doing the same thing with the world, and you're probably doing it on the grandest level, and you're not going to change. It's going to be impossible to change. So radical accountability equals opportunity to shift and change and transform.
Absolutely. I 100% agree with that. And if you boil it down to a very simple thing for kids and 5-year-olds, if we took it to that level, it's basically saying statements. I feel, I think.
Yeah.
And that's the way to boil it down. That's at least my thinking on it here is I work with kids all the time. I had an incident just this last week with a kid that I work with through work and whatnot. And he was in the situation where he had a really big reaction because another kid stepped on his shoe. And so we spent a whole hour talking about basically how we had to break it down. Okay, you guys were standing here and here. Was he paying attention? No. Have you guys had any other problems this school year? No. Do you guys play with each other on the playground? Yeah. Is he normally pretty nice to you? Yeah. Did he know that you don't like your shoes being stepped on and being dirty? Well, no, that's not my question. Did he know that? No. Okay, so do you think it was probably an accident? Yeah. And it's okay, you are allowed to feel how you feel. I'm like, how do you feel? It's mad. Him made me mad. I was okay, and one thing I've been working on this kid with for a really long time is you can't blame others for how you're feeling. You can't blame the other person for making you feel a certain way. Only you can control how you feel. It's okay, we can't remember we talked about that a few weeks ago, how we can't blame other people for how we feel. Okay, I understand that you're mad, but you need to take responsibility for you being mad. And so then I got him to saying, I feel mad when other kid steps on my shoes. Okay, good. Now we've taken responsibility and accountability, responsibility for our emotions. Now we're back in control of ourselves, right? Now we can make better choices. And so it comes back to a lot of what you're saying. The framing of it comes back to also choice theory as well, right? We have to make these different choices. Everything we do is a choice. Choice theory is something I'm really big on. But we make these different choices. We make choices all throughout a day, all day long, and some of them have a negative consequence, some of them have a positive consequence, some of them have no consequence. Some of them are just choices we make just to make choices. Everything's a choice, so we're always making choices. So that's the foundation of choice theory. Is that it's exactly like it sounds. So we have to make these right choices, right? You can either, like for your example, Michael, with your wife, you could
Mhm.
either stay in that space and you feel yourself getting reactive, frustrated, upset, and you could either stay in that space and more than likely go downhill from there, or like the choice you guys made, and the rule you guys have in your marriage is to, take that break and go do your thing.
Yeah.
But also the choice that you made, the antecedent to that, before
Mhm.
that, after you're done with the call or the client, straight into this other project, you made that choice to go straight from one to another, whether
Mhm.
it was something you were super conscious about, the place you were doing is, okay, let me finish this. I'm going to go help her. No big deal. The
Mhm.
place it was at was right there, but there was still later consequences, right?
Mhm.
So we're always making these choices, but we have to be accountable for those choices. Like you're saying, like, okay, I was feeling this way because of this, and this is because of my mom, and all this other stuff, kind of thing. So it's really
Yeah.
important to be radical, also aware, and know
Yeah.
yourself, and know those rules, and know those bounds to
Mhm.
where you need to take those breaks. So,
Yeah.
um,
Agreed. Agreed. And with we've also what I also recognize as well is it's the radical accountability is also paired with perspective. It's really potent. So whatever
mhm,
perspective means to you, if that means you're looking at life through God's eyes, or you're just maybe a little bit higher than where you are now, where you're seeing what you're experiencing from a contextual space, regardless of what it is, my context with the situation with my wife was that my son has been waking up a lot during the night. We've both slept a little less than we usually do, and he's been going through a little period, and that's okay. So she's just tired. And maybe the way she's communicating isn't perfect, and maybe she can't think straight, but she's just tired. That's it. It's not a
that's it.
personal attack. And then,
Mm-mm.
later in night, and I found myself getting, feeling into her tiredness because I definitely have like an empathetic like connection, of course, with people and of course with her and my son. But I could feel that. And so instead of like tuning in and like getting all ruminating about, oh, like I'm so frustrated, blah, 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 I was just like, let it come, let it pass. And then later in the night, before she went to bed, she was about to go to bed. I said, hey, come here. And I just held her. And I was like, we had a hard day, huh? It's a difficult day. And just held her. That's it. I didn't like talk about anything really deep. I was just holding her. And it was such an important, she felt so held and so seen just from that simple gesture. We don't need to overcomplicate it. We don't need to dig in beyond what's coming up. That's where we do it with our therapists and our coaches and our mentors and our guides, or in our own spiritual practices, or directly with the Holy Spirit, with God, with Jesus, with whomever, right? The point is, in a relational and grounded way, there's opportunities to make it just simple for yourself. And that's that radical
Mhm.
accountability coupled with some level of perspective. Like, look at it from a little bit more of a bird's eye view. Does your wife hate you? No, she doesn't hate you. She's literally married to you. She has a
Right?
kid with you. Maybe she's just tired. And that's it. Instead of going into the rumination of whatever's coming up all the time. The simplicity of accountability, looking at what's there, and perspective can do a lot in one's life. And just basically, like, the accountability is humility and grace to me, and then and compassion to yourself, forgiveness, all that stuff, and then the perspective is context. It's context reframe. So
Mhm.
yeah, it's super potent.
Yeah, and I think this all leads into another concept of yours of avoid dance,
Hmm.
dancing around the void. So
Yeah.
why do you think, especially men, struggle with facing the truth of their lives? And like you're mentioning right now, with that radical accountability and some perspective, we can really see, like, okay, it's really not that bad. The truth of it is, she's just tired. Maybe she's
Yeah.
hungry. Same with our kids. Maybe they're tired. Maybe they're hungry. Maybe
Hmm.
they're just bored. Maybe something happened at school. Maybe they're having a bad day, kind of thing.
Hmm.
Maybe they're feeling something that they don't understand and they can't process because they're literally children, and they don't have the ability to do so. So But why do you think so many people, especially men, struggle with facing the truth of their lives? There's that dang speech impediment again. And what advice would you give to someone feeling stuck in that cycle?
Yeah. So why? It's a big question to answer. I think that wholeheartedly the best way I can answer it is they don't want to let go of who they think they are. And when you've built a version or an idea of who you are for so long, especially when you've done that for a significant amount of years, and everyone around you is essentially in one way or another amplifying that. Oh, this or that. Like for me, it was the social life. Everybody knew me as that. So I had to show up. My perspective was I had to show up like that. When you have an identity structure that, whether it's serving you or not, is what you're used to and comfortable, it's going to be difficult to let go of that and let something new be born. And it comes down to that relationship with discomfort. Most people are clawing away at what they perceive as comfort and basically in one way or another denying the very fabric of our reality, which is change. A lot of people even denying the truth of death, that we are all either sprinting or crawling toward a very imminent organic death in our life.
Mm.
We don't even talk about it. Most people don't even think about it. Or maybe when they do, they shut that part of them off, because that's the ultimate transformation. That's the ultimate mystery, that we can only imagine what happens after death. We can only perceive a version of what happens. So it scares the shit out of us, because that's when we have to let go of everything.
Yeah, that
The
is scary.
advice I would give is start small. Start with the things that you are willing to look at. Right? So like if you start with something like a habit, now you can change a habit and have unconscious pattern disruption, meaning you can reprogram the unconscious on a habit level consciously. Just know that it takes a significant more amount of time to do that, but it's not impossible. But my similar to the question you asked yourself, if you just have a curiosity and a courage to just ask, well, why do I do this? Or why do I believe this? Or why do I continue to operate like this? And start to take note where you want to say yes, that you say no, and where you say yes when it is a no inside, which is really, to me, a relationship with your intuition and your gut. That process can be really powerful, compounded over time. All that boiled down, the easiest way in like practicality is build a meditation, breath work, or some level of a practice that helps you tune in. Even if it's prayer, if it's reading scripture, if it's some sort of anchor every day to give yourself space. That is the best way for you to start to learn about what happens when you sit with a deeper truth, because there's layers. You know that, man. Like what you think is the truth is just the top of an iceberg, and you just keep going in and in. You do not have to unpack your life in a day. You don't have to do it in a year, but start the process. Start to look beneath. Start to look at the motivational level and begin that process by adding some really amazing practices to your life that help you tune to that. Other than that, if you're somebody that isn't willing to look, my whole thing around this is, well, you're just not going to look then. I'm not going to convince you to look. But if you do want to look and you do feel stuck and you do feel like you're not sure where to turn, reach out to other people that you see doing this type of work, even if they're not quote unquote professionals. Twitter, Threads, Instagram there's a gigantic community of people that are on a spiritual and personal growth path. And at the very least, you could reach out to me and I can send you referrals,
Right.
It's like, I know a lot of people that are at different timeline types of therapies and different points of like, if you're just starting out, here's a great place to start. But it is a big question of why, the motivation I feel is the biggest old identity, new identity stripping, which is another word for death and rebirth over and over and over
Mm-hmm.
again, dying, parts of you dying to be integrated back into the whole, to be rebirthed through how you are. I don't blame people. This is the thing, man. I don't blame people for not wanting to look. Like, I
Oh,
didn't
100%.
look.
100%. No,
It's not
I didn't
it's not
want to.
easy
I didn't
work.
want to until I had to. I had no other
Yeah.
choice.
And that's the thing that I'll reflect is like, it's gonna happen at one point or another, whether you choose it.
Yeah.
It's gonna happen. So wouldn't it be a lot better for you to start that process now instead of the last 3 years of your life looking back with regret on how you
Yeah.
lived?
100%.
Tell people all the time, if you want your life to be fulfilling, reverse engineer your death and it'll be fulfilling. Meaning, at the point, if you were dying tomorrow, what would you look back at your life and regret, resent, all the things that you would change, and start to change them now
Yeah.
so that you don't end up 80, 90, 100, 110, whatever age you're, meant to pass away, looking back with disdain or looking back with dissonance on how you lived your life. There's always going to be little things, it's not perfect, but if you know that you gave it your all and you were given opportunities to look at your stuff and connect with the real parts of you, that light within you, you'll have minimal regrets then. But if you're
100%.
consistently pushing opportunities away for that, promise you, I see it all the time with people. It shows up. It eventually catches up.
It always catches up to you. It always catches up. And it's so important, like you mentioned. One of the big things that you mentioned there, at least for me, is that if you don't start, then it's going to catch up to you eventually. It's just a matter of when. It's not if, it's when.
Yeah.
When is all the regrets and all the things that you shoulda, coulda, wouldas, but didn't. It's all the shoulda, coulda, wouldas, should have done different, could have done that, could have done this, should have done that, would have done that. All those things catch up to you eventually. It's better to prevent and prepare and be proactive about not going down those, having that happen in the first place, rather than react and have to, be reactive and take preventative measures and reactive measures to address everything in the end. Another thing that really stood out to me about what you're saying there is just the small steps. You don't go from never having not having run in 3 years to running a marathon overnight, right? You have to start small. You have to start with going on a walk around the block, seeing how that feels. And then you have to build up, right? Everything's a small step. Not everything is going to go great. Not everything is going to go according to plan. Right now, I was just rebuilding and getting back up in my own fitness and my health and whatnot, feeling great. And then boom, something random happens. Don't know what happened. Re-aggravated a 7-year-old hernia injury that I'm getting re-looked at, kind of thing, at the time of this recording. So not everything always goes to plan. But there's a reason that not everything goes to plan. Sometimes we do just have to slow down, and we have to go with life as it is and as we're looking at it. So it's super important to just remember those things. So a couple more things I wanted to jump in here just real quick before we get into the fun part, the few fun questions here that I have. I just wanted to ask you about the Radiant Core 90-day guided journal. So how has journaling been a part of your own healing process? What do you find most powerful about how has journaling been a part of your healing process, and what do you find most powerful about reflecting on your journey through writing?
Yeah. So I will have to be completely transparent in saying I'm not as diligent and as deep as a journaler as my wife. She is a career journaler. So, but I will say this, that throughout pockets of my life where I've been through really deep alchemical processes, journaling has been a way for me to empty my mind out on something so that I can start to see something clearly by just allowing that emptiness to come through, right? Because I believe emptiness is where wisdom comes from. It's not when we're thinking about things. It's when things come to us from God. It's like or through an experience, and through the alchemical process of the experience, there's a reflection process, but that wisdom nugget comes from somewhere deeper, is what I believe. So a lot of what it is, and this is how Buddhism and many other practices or religious sort of organizations, or rather, let's just say frameworks is a better word. It's about becoming empty. so that what can fill you is spirit. What can fill you is the energy of divine energy that is inherently there, but is being pushed down by all the personalities and all the opinions and all the whatevers, right? So for me, journaling is an emptying process. As a writer, a songwriter, and a producer, it also is a process of piecing things together. So sometimes by journaling, it allows me to piece things together that my mind will, at those times, pull me into different places. Whereas the paper allows me to have something that's a bit more physical. I have a 90-day guided journal that is definitely congruent with how I operate with people on questions with the unconscious mind, both in the surface and the deeper spaces. So that's a great place to start with journaling. If you're, where do I start? And you need like some support. I started with the Stoic journal, really awesome too. Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, and one more other gentleman, philosophers. Really amazing. I think the Stoicism route is probably more attuned to men than it may be to women. It's a bit more, it's just energetically at least. So I think that book coupled with the journal is also a great place to start because it's 365 questions. So you don't have to think about what to journal. But how I utilize journaling now is like I'm constantly jotting things down, like realizations, nuggets, like when I'm speaking to someone when they're at my house and I just have this channel come through. I put it somewhere, I put it down somewhere, either to remind me of something later or to actually just put it in somewhere so that I can reflect on it later and deepen into it later, or maybe even link it to a theme, because I do a weekly newsletter and a lot of my life tends to be, as most people, seasons. So those seasons can be 24-hour seasons, 1 week seasons, one month seasons, or the actual seasons of 3 to 4 months. There's always like I said, you look past the curtain, there's always reflection. I can't stop reflecting on my life. So journaling has just been a way for me to channel that, similar to music, similar to anything, a way to channel that.
100%. I love that, man. And so one of my favorite journals that I got recently, I talked to him back on, I don't know what episode 145 of the podcast, is this guided journal for dad. It's a guided journal from vision to action. So big fan of Steve's work on this. I think this is a really cool tool, something I've used. Again, I'm not as diligent with it. I have it doggy-eared. I'm not going to show it because I'm kind of embarrassed with how much is not done. But I have been trying to work through it. I forget. I pick things up, I put things down. I have ADHD. It's just like so. But the other thing I want to mention or get into here before we get to the fun questions, we're almost there, I promise. Time blocking is a tool for many of us use to bring structure into our lives. How did implementing some kind of time management strategies like the ones you have help reclaim control over your day and maintain the progress you made?
Oh my gosh. If I had not taken back agency over my time, my life would be a freaking disaster. I mean, straight up. And I don't really even know how I functioned before it. And it's really relatively new practice. It's only been about a year of really focusing in on my time and my structure. I think the biggest aspect of it, first and foremost, was me having to clear up my baggage around structure itself. Structure is a masculine principle. It's one of the 3 masculine core principles. So I had to clear it up because as a creative, I wanted to be free flowing. I didn't want to be on anyone else's time. That's true to a certain extent. At the same time, I was like, well, what if that was my own time? Like, what if I took back that sovereignty and created a schedule to match my goals? I think especially it was something I needed to do before becoming a father, because now I have this whole other being and I have other sort of priorities and values around how I want to spend my time and set up my schedule. If I don't have those boundaries, which is time blocking, it's boundaries, then things are going to naturally continue to domino effect into time I could be spending with my family. Now, it isn't perfect. I'm always in a refinement process, and having several businesses and working on several different projects at once, of course there's going to be bleed over where there is, and that's where the grace comes in, and that's where communication to my wife comes in, even communication to my son, even though he's not fully speaking. It's like, I'll be right back, like I promise I'll be right back, or
Oh yeah, he
yeah,
understands. He
he
understands all
understands
that stuff.
totally. So it's like communicating clearly as if he's an adult. But yeah, time blocking is huge, and one of the things that's most important to me about time blocking is the time that I set aside for my spiritual practices. Like
Absolutely.
this is why I'm a personal growth transformational coach. If I don't take care of myself, how could I possibly take care of my family, my clients, and anyone
there's no
else that
chance.
informally? It's going to be a hollow version of who I am and what I'm capable of. So I take that part of my time blocking pretty seriously, and I'm not rigid either. I'm not like, oh my gosh, I went 10 minutes over on XYZ. I can't believe, and then I get into shame or guilt. I'm not like that. I've merged the two of both a structural life and a flexible creative flow into a place where it feels right, and I allow myself days where I'm needing more spontaneity and more free flow to happen. Because I have a full roster of clients, because I have all these businesses, it would be impossible for me to do that and show up as a father and a husband and a friend and a son and all the above if I didn't have some semblance of a structural life. And so time blocking's really changed that. And the blueprint that I work with is really flexible. That's why I love it. Really clear, really flexible, not complicated at all. And it keeps things in check. It keep things in perspective for me. And allows me to do the things I need to do and accomplish the things I need to do, as well as show up for all the times that I need to show up for as a father.
Absolutely. And I think time blocking is great. I don't know the people who go like by the half hour or by the 15 minutes or by the hour kind of thing. Like, I don't, I get I understand how you, don't get me wrong. I understand how they do it.
Yeah.
But like, it drives me crazy because like my appointments, like at work that I do, like my own scheduling and whatnot, they're between 9 and 5. And so they're like either on the 15 or on the hour or on the half hour or something. They're very structured, it's very rigid kind of thing. Right. But my favorite days are days where they doesn't look normal, to where it's like, okay, maybe I have some extra time here. Maybe I have a weird off hour appointment here. Maybe I have to take my lunch a little bit later here to squeeze these other ones in kind of thing. Or maybe I have to go to a school for a meeting here kind of thing. Like those days are like way more fun for me because they're way more like a little bit more unpredictable, right? Never know what I'm gonna walk into, never know where I'm gonna be going, never know what's gonna happen next, kind of thing. Or maybe I'm gonna get to stop and okay, I know I have a half hour here. I'm probably gonna be super thirsty, so maybe I'm gonna get to stop at a shop I like or something, and get a drink from somewhere I haven't been in a while, and really enjoy that kind of thing. So I think time blocking is one of the strategies that I work with parents on, is to maybe not be so rigid with the times.
Yeah.
Maybe just give like a general block of 3:30 to 4:15. Like give that 45 minutes. Maybe don't plan out every minute, but just give that 45 minutes just for like chill out time.
Yeah, that's
like
what I
you
do.
can do whatever you want for 45 minutes. And then after that, it's from 4 to 5, like that's your hour to do your homework. If it takes you 20 minutes, great. Do whatever you want for the next 40 minutes. But this is your hour for that. This is your block for that. And so on and so forth. I think those are like really powerful, like time blocking, being able to give it like chunks of time. So then you're not putting too much pressure on yourself.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, I have 15 minutes to do my homework. I got to get it done. I got to blah, 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 blah kind of thing. Or we're putting too much pressure on our kids or on ourselves to get things done in a certain amount of time. It's like, no, generally between 6:30 and 7:30, the kids will get in the shower at some point. Generally between 7:30 and 8:30, they'll go to bed, kind of thing. So then you're not putting too much stress and too much pressure on yourself to get things done in a certain amount of time. So I absolutely love time blocking. I love these two concepts that you have. Not concepts, but tools. The tools that you were mentioning earlier when it came to avoidance. These two tools are great. Journaling and taking back control of your time can be super powerful. So
super powerful.
Michael, are you ready to get into the fun?
I've been having fun the entire hour, so.
Me too, honestly. But are you ready to get into some of the more lightheartedness of the conversation here? Perfect.
Yeah.
Before we get into the lightheartedness of the conversation, I do just want to shout out today's sponsors, partners. The people who are keeping the podcast going, keeping me going, great partners with the podcast. First of all, the opening beat that you heard and the beat I'm about to play right now for y'all, these beats are straight from the Podbeat app. The Podbeat app is a free app to download. It can turn any podcast, any audiobook into a musical experience. Right now, we're listening to the trap beat as it overlays my voice. You can overlay any podcast. So if you want to go back, download the Podbeat app, pull it up, go work out, go for a run, go for a walk. There's different options, lo-fi, trip hop, trap, EDM, and so many more that you can get from the Podbeat app. Absolutely love the Podbeat app. Nate, Joy, they are absolutely a fantastic bunch, fantastic couple. They are fantastic. Their app, fantastic product. They created fantastic. So great there. Additionally, let's shout out the Forefathers apparel. I'm not wearing any Forefathers apparel today, but absolutely love Forefathers apparel. Y'all know that. So go ahead and check that out. And then the other thing I want to shout out is just the opportunity for you to become a patron over on Patreon for literally $1 to $2 a month. That's it. That's all I'm asking for. $2, $1 a month. Support me, support the podcast. You'll get access to every episode early. You'll get some first say on any new products or anything that we come out with. You'll get exclusive Q&A opportunities. So some pretty basic stuff because there's not a ton that I can offer right now, but you get early access every episode, which is pretty cool. So you don't have to wait. You would get invited to join this recording as an audience member in the future so that you can literally see live all the mistakes, all the ups and downs, all the all the things that happen, and you can watch it live. So I think that's a pretty cool opportunity too. That's in the $2 tier to talk a little bit about some of those perks. But yeah, so some cool stuff there, some cool opportunities there if you want to become a patron, literally for $1 to $2 a month. That'll be linked down below. You can also find the other partners of the podcast about apparel, the June app, Man Herald as well, if you need to connect to someone for your health and wellness. So those are all down in the description of this episode. So without further ado, let's jump into this fun question. So first one is just a piece of advice, simple piece of advice. If you can go back and give advice to 20-something Michael who was living that fast life, what would you tell him? Just that one piece of advice that you could tell him.
Yeah. Enjoy your life more, actually. Yeah. Don't take things so seriously. It's all going to work out. Yeah. That would be the advice.
I love that. What's one thing about meditation that you wish more people understood, especially those who think it's boring or not for them?
Meditation is no different from flow state. Any point in your life in which you're totally immersed in something, whether you're fixing a car, whether you're playing an instrument, whether you're on a podcast and speaking with someone and time is just moving in a different way, you're meditating. Meditation isn't only when you're sitting in perfect posture with your eyes closed. It's a practice of flow. It's a practice of presence. So don't get hard on yourself trying to do the perfect meditation. Just get into the things that light you up. And you'll get into a flow state and you'll be able to, it's called optimal experience. You'll get into that optimal experience, therefore able to meditate. And those times where you sit will have context. You'll know now, oh, it's just a flow state. So cool. Great. That's a little less pressure.
No, I love that. I've never thought about it that way. That is just a perspective kind of thing because that happens to me so often to where I'm like podcasting and then the hour, 2 hours, sometimes 3. Shout out to Mr. Nice Guy. Our podcast that we did, it went nearly 3 hours. We didn't even notice. We didn't check on the time. Just flew, just flows. And I get to finally have a moment, jump on, sit down, relax, play some NCAA. It'll be hours. NCAA 25. It'll be hours. Will just go by. I mean, that's part of the time suck of video games, but it's also just time just moves differently. So I absolutely love those things. I love that right there. Describe your ideal day now compared to what it used to be. What's changed the most?
My ideal day is waking up next to my son and having like 30, 45 minutes maybe of just like playing with him in the bed. Like he just laughs and he's just such a goofball. And just my wife being there too and her being playful as well. Like starting my day like that, then getting into a deep spiritual practice, connecting with my own energy, maybe getting some messages from God on what it is to focus my day on. Getting a good workout in, maybe some cold plunge sauna rounds, playing some music, some client calls where I get to help people and give and provide insights and help them through their life in that transformative way. All throughout the day, amazing, like nourishing foods that are just like fantastically cooked. I would say perhaps even heading over to the river and jumping in the river with my family. It's really like my life is definitely simplified in that way. I think if you asked me that question probably 7 years ago, or maybe even 5 years ago, I would have said, wake up, Maybe work out. That was probably the only thing that I retained. Wake up in Mykonos or whatever, someplace in the world, or bougie place, make some music with some people, and then go out at night, get a like really expensive bougie dinner, and then go to a club. Like, it's definitely changed for sure. An ideal day is when I'm in bed by 9:30, maybe 9:30.
Attaboy. There it is.
But I'm up early, I'm up at like 5. So I
100%.
want to be
Yeah.
up, and I want to be, that's my time to myself. And yeah, community dinner at night before we kind of close out the day, talking about life, talking about God, talking about transformation, talking about energy, talking about big things and how we're here to change the world, and doing that, really doing that.
Absolutely. So your 5 to 9s are like your grounding parts of your day, it sounds like that 5 to 9 in the morning. That's when you get time with your son, in some quiet time with God, some workout time, so some you time, cold plunge, sauna, all the things. That 5 to 9, and then that last 5 to 9 of the day, essentially the other the bookends of your day, are very big and important to you. That 5 to 9 after the day, being able to sit down, connect with your family, do those things, and then have fun in between the day as well. Help people do the thing, jump in the river, ground yourself. So that's a big change from
Huge
what
change.
it used to be. But that's what happens when you go through this journey, when you transform, you meditate. Maybe not just meditate, but when you go through this kind of meditation journey, you go through this self-exploration journey, you become a different person. You have kids. It completely changes you, as it's supposed to, as it should. It should completely change how you control those bookends of your day and how you just go about your day and go about your business as it is. That's awesome. So what's last one here? Second to last one. What's one small daily habit you picked up that makes a difference in how you feel?
Actually, a newer one would be self-hypnosis. For years, I've known about hypnosis, and I've done hypnosis sessions, and I'm also a master practitioner of hypnosis now. But getting into self-guided, like me recording my own voice, hypnotizing myself, is like a whole new level of reprogramming that has completely shifted. Huge, because, like, when you begin to trust your own voice in your mind, however that shows up, it's like the deepest, it's almost like you're hearing your own thoughts, right? So when you're hearing your own thoughts in a positive, affirming way, affirming who you're becoming, affirming what you're believing, all these things in the as if now of who you are, there's a depth to that that's undeniable, that you're not passively, meditating and receiving, and you're not actively breathing in like a breathwork practice or some of the other practices that are more activations. It's kind of like a really deep way and a very simple way for one to consistently reprogram their unconscious mind. And it makes a big difference, man. It's huge. So I would say that is the newest and most profound. It's been a lot of fun, specifically as well, because I get to get a little creative with it. And sometimes, like, where I'm headed right now is making the actual soundtrack behind it, because of my decades in the music industry, being able to make those. So yeah, it's like a good merging of worlds for me. And been doing it for clients, not with their voices, because there's hypnotic languaging and hypnotic toning, but even just to be like, what do you want to believe about yourself? Okay, cool. I'll put that into the script, and it's like a personal, basically, meditation, which is super cool, versus like, a very general forgiveness meditation, a very general compassion meditation, a very general presence meditation. It's like, what are the specific mechanisms that you want to begin to tune to in your life? Because where awareness goes, energy flows. So every day, if you're going, I'm a compassionate, strong, and resilient and kind individual, you're going to start to see more of that than all of what it's not in your life. And so that's that big shift.
I love that. That's really cool. I hadn't heard about that. That's really cool. Love to learn more about that. I'm gonna look that up. Very last question here, before we wrap this thing up. Let's say a young father comes to you. He's like 19, 20 years old. I know this is a question you've been waiting for the whole time. Everyone waits for this question at the end of the podcast. That's why they tune in. Some people actually skip to this because this is some of their favorite parts of the podcast. But what is one or two pieces of advice that you would give to a young dad? He's like 18 to 22 years old, super young, just had his first kid, scared out of his mind. comes to you, you get to give them just one, maybe two pieces of advice.
All of the things, first off, all of like the change in the diaper, all those things, like you could Google them, go on YouTube, ask some people. Don't worry about keeping the child alive. That's like not the hardest part, nor is it something to worry about. The best thing you can do is take care of your heart and clear your mind. Be present. Don't let moments pass by. Whatever comes up in those moments that are pulling you out of being present with your family, specifically with your kid, is a place to start to work, is a place to start to look. All in all, don't worry about, do your best to not get caught in the trap of needing to worry about resources and money and providing. Every father worries about it. Every father goes through it. The only thing that your child needs is love. And the only thing that your child needs is your heart and your presence. So any way in which you can do the work you need to be able to go and do what you got to do with work and then come back present and come back loving and come back, whether you're 9 to 5 or you're working entrepreneurially at home, that is where it counts. And that first year or so, they're just going to want mommy anyway. So you're good.
Facts.
You got some time.
Facts. You're good until they start walking and blabbing a little bit.
And then once they start walking and blabbing, now it's like your time to shine. Don't get
caught.
Dude, don't get caught
all the time.
Yeah. Don't get caught. You don't need to worry about, am I connecting? Am I doing this? Like support the mother. That's the biggest advice. You support the mother, support your wife, support your partner first. It sounds backwards, but you supporting the mother, you supporting the partner will do a lot more for the child than you trying to support the child at the first year of their life. And that triangle will switch when they start to walk and talk, and now it'll become more of an actual triangle versus like feeding to the mother feeding to the child. But it is a game changer. Just serve your partner. Your partner, be present and loving when you have time with your kid, and have fun. Do things that you wanted to do as a kid with your kid. I know there's not a lot in the first 6 months that you can do, but like go to a park, do the things that light you up too. Don't let being a father all of a sudden, take you out of like needing to sacrifice all these things. Like invite your child into your life that you love. Obviously, given, that your life that you love is healthy. So take a look,
Absolutely.
It's like, don't bring your baby to the club, but it's like, if your life is healthy and you're taking care of yourself, invite your child into that life and show them what it means, even though they're not able to reflect it back right away. Show them what it means to fully love yourself, to fully love your life, and to fully show up. Don't worry, it's going to be fine. All the shit I worried about didn't matter.
Right? No. Long term. You got to think long term perspective. And I love all that right there. Don't sweat the little stuff. All right. Well, Michael, this has been just an amazing conversation. It's been a fantastic conversation. I'm being bugged for Saturday morning breakfast, so we're going to wrap this thing up now.
Yeah.
Go ahead and tell the people where they can find you, find more of your work, keep up with you, all those things. Go ahead and give yourself a shameless plug here.
I will. Thank you so much. And it's been a pleasure to be here as well. So my www.michaelgazzo.com is my website. All of my offerings are there and ways in which you can actually communicate with me and send me messages and perhaps book a call to start to work together, or if you're just needing some advice, whatever it might be. My Instagram is at Michael V. Gazzo, and I answer all of my DMs, and I put a lot of really powerful teachings on there, which is really great for people that are just starting out and wanting to learn more about where to begin. I'll have a lot more coming up as I've been shifting my messaging and shifting down and niching down to who it is I'm here to serve. My Twitter is also, TikTok is also the same. They'll have the same videos as Instagram, but if you're a TikTok person versus Instagram, there you go. But yeah, really the website and DMs are going to be the easiest way to reach me. I have plenty of ways that you can access me, either through community or through group programs or one-on-one work, or a huge family and ecology of healers, facilitators, guides, coaches, like therapists. We have a huge network. So if you're just wondering where to begin, at whatever place you're at in your timeline, just shoot me a message, shoot me a DM, comment on my videos. I always respond to everybody. I'm very, very clear on that, and take that part of it seriously. I want to be engaging with people. So yeah, website, Instagram, those are the main ways.
I love that, man. Well, thank you so much for being on. Like I was saying, thank you so much for being on. Appreciate the time. Make sure you guys go and follow Mike. Give him some love. Look into the stuff he's got. So he's got some great tools, some great material that you can find on his website, whatnot. And of course, also do all the things you can do for Young Dad Pod. You can find everything about the podcast on youngdadpod.com. Links to all the social right there. And then also don't forget, go and become a patron over on Patreon for as little as $1 a month. Additionally, you can also find full transcript and show notes of this episode over on the website as well on the resources tab. That's something that's a little bit newer that I haven't talked about a lot, but you can find the show notes and full transcript of every episode over on the website, at least from a certain point forward. Other than that, I think that's everything. Mike, thanks for being on. Thanks for being here today. Make sure you guys go like, follow, subscribe, whatever platform you're on. Do the things you can to show your love and support. Outside of that, we will catch you next time right here on the Young Dad Podcast.